Hello and welcome to The Nation. You're joining me, Elaine Noor Abdullah, as I come to you live from Wisma Bernama, right here in the capital city of Kuala Lumpur. Now, according to experts, urban farming is a way to lower the nation's growing dependence on imported food, which carries an annual bill of more than 50 billion ringgit, and it's rising. The nation's dependence on food imports rose from 51.4 billion ringgit in 2019 up to 55.4 billion ringgit in the year 2020, and the figure is expected to rise. Now, this comes amid a supply chain disruption in the food sector and rising cost of living due to the ongoing global COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we can see that urban farming has taken place worldwide, but you ask, what about Malaysia? In today's episode, we'll discuss urban farming, rethinking the agriculture sector. Today, in conversation with me is ZULHAZMI Abu Bakar, the CEO of MRANTI, and chiming in a little later is Dr. ZULHAZMI SAYUTI, Director of Horticulture Research Center from MARDI. But we'll start with ZULHAZMI. How are you doing, ZULHAZMI? Thanks for joining us here in conversation today. We're talking about urban farming. So before we go into the nitty-gritty details, perhaps you can give us a little bit of overview of what urban farming is and some of its examples.
Thanks, Elaine. Thank you for having me here today. Urban farming, I think it's quite literal in that sense. It's really about production, production of crops in a urban setting, right? So when you're talking about urban setting, it means in confined environments, right? In environments that doesn't require mass in terms of land. And it can be done on your rooftops, it can be done in your balcony, it can be done in containers. So basically the environment doesn't necessarily matter. Production of food and crops and vegetables and fruits, basically farming can be done in an urban setting, right? So you don't necessarily need to have a vast piece of land and how you would do farming traditionally by the farmers. That's essentially urban farming, and it's gaining popularity as the rise of urbanization rate, right? So as more and more people move from rural areas to urban settings, then of course food consumption, the need for food increases as well. So I think this is why urban farming is gaining popularity. And maybe I wish to also note that I think about close to 20% of our world's food is actually currently produced by urban farming, right?
Oh, wow.
So yes, but this is a global number. Which is a global number, and I think it's just a matter of time that Malaysia catches up as well. But we have started. We're doing a number of initiatives already in Malaysia right now. It's gaining popularity. It's really gaining popularity.
Yeah. No, I've loved this concept of urban farming. I've looked at it for a long time. I mean, the first thought that came to my mind during the pandemic was, why are we not going into urban farming? Why is this not part of something that somebody should be providing an impetus towards? Because at that point of time, we realized everybody was sort of like locked down. You can't go out anywhere, and there were so many vacant lots everywhere in the city. In terms of we have a concrete jungle, but that can be turned into an opportunity. So as you mentioned, urban farming is on the rise. And what I wanted to know is, what's the economic opportunity? Because you're mentioning you can do it on the rooftop, you can do it on the balcony, but those are very small scale. Are we looking at a larger scale sort of like opportunity here? And what is the math on the saving, and how does the trickle-down effect benefit farmers and consumers alike? Perhaps you can give us some overview of where we are going with this.
So I think production capabilities is also a function of output is a function of production capabilities. So if the production capability or the size of the urban farming setting is of a certain scale, then obviously the produce or the outcome would basically correlate with the size of production. So we actually have an entity called Urban Hijau. It's actually an urban farm and a social enterprise. Just to give you an example, I've actually read that they produce anywhere between 300 to 400 kilos, right, of crops every month. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? So and they are also smaller based urban farmers who can actually produce for, say, maybe smaller restaurants, smaller capacity, right? But ultimately it depends on your production capabilities, right? So like I said, urban farming can be actually stacked up. You know, you can do it on your rooftops, you can do it in containers, you can stack it upwards. So essentially, the economics can actually work out very favorable, right? So just to give you an example, we also have a partner called Boom Grow, right? So what they actually do is they currently supply vegetables, and these are import quality. Sorry, my earpods dropped off. These are import quality vegetables, right? Import quality vegetables to all the 5-star hotels, right? That prepare gourmet meals, right? So Bungro does that. And it is actually produced in a cloud connected indoor machine farm, right? So it's modular, it's racked upwards, right? It's stacked upwards, and it's done in a container, and it can also be in a small room, a small environment, for as long as there's height, right? So now what they do is they provide the right control lighting, they provide the right temperature, they provide the right inputs in terms of fertilizers, and these are all organic, right? They are all organic, no pesticides involved, and it's very data driven. So it's using technology and innovation to basically grow vegetables, right? And they are supporting many of the 5-star hotels right now. Of course, we are not looking at it at mass, but it's already self-sustaining in that sense.
Right. So what I want to know is, what is the state of Malaysia's urban farming scene? Do you have any statistics with regards to that? And what are the opportunities for growth here?
Unfortunately, we are still at the state where we are sort of building our numbers. So I actually don't have a statistic of where we are in terms of the global benchmark in that sense. But I know that there are an increasing number of entities who are dabbling into urban farming, right? And this is also a function of familiarity and more use case of tech and innovation. And I think, as you rightly mentioned earlier, the pandemic also pushed us in that direction. So people became creative and thought about, you know what, maybe I should be growing vegetables and fresh produces in my own backyard, right? So in the event of a supply chain disruption, your food chain is not disrupted. So urban farming is a very, very important component in food security. And that can only be achieved within the use of technology and innovation. So there are a lot of companies and entities right now producing multiple innovative solutions to go in this direction. And that's quite encouraging at this point. And as an entity, we are also doing everything to support them.
So I think one other thing is, perhaps it may seem obvious, but what are some of the benefits of urban farming that people are not seeing? You know, people just see that, oh, it's just called urban farming. So perhaps you can lay it down so that it becomes a little bit more, clear or obvious to those who are just thinking, oh, maybe because it's just small scale. So what are some of the things that we're missing out here?
Yeah, so I think, again, the economics needs to be really ironed out. But if we can achieve the right economics of scale, urban farming can actually bring down the cost of production and actually the cost for the end user or the customers who are actually buying vegetables, right? Because right now, I think the whole farming or the whole farm to market, the supply chain is rather long, right? Hence, the costs are all imputed into the supply chain. Now, when you shorten the supply chain, there is a possibility of reducing cost, right? And it will be more efficient. And when that's more efficient, eventually we will achieve cost reduction. That's one. Now, urban farming is also a possible solution to climate change, because when it's controlled, when the environment is controlled, it's green, right? The infrastructure is all green, right? So you're using organic fertilizers, and in some cases there's no pesticides that are involved, right? And all of this will contribute to climate change, right? Incremental contribution to climate change. That's one. Now, the other thing is that we have to move in the direction of innovative solutions and technology. Now, urban farming gives you that sweet spot where you incorporate tech and innovation towards agriculture, which is basically a big part to our survival, right? It's basically providing us with food and food security, therefore. So tech and innovation is one way to scale, to provide efficiency, to lower barriers, right, to the end users. That's a very important. And in that process, we will also upskill and upgrade our local talent in that process. So that's one immediate sort of benefit. And also, I think the Department of Agriculture has also projected that the yield from urban agriculture will increase from about 1,000 metric ton, which was in 2014, to about 8,000 metric ton in 2025, which means the income of the agriculture practitioners would actually increase. So we're looking at from about 1,200 to about 1,600 in terms of their income in itself. So, I mean, if you look at it in totality, it's providing increase in their baseline income.
Right. Now, I just wanted to recap. So essentially, there are quite a number of benefits. For me, it's very clear that the logistics, the shortening of the logistics really help in terms of the cost, because everybody's complaining like, I hear my mom and dad saying, oh, the vegetables are so expensive. It's ridiculous right now that, you know, whatever vegetables that, especially during Chinese New Year, you know, there's sort of a high demand for everything, and everything just sort of shot through the roof. And this is an opportunity for people to actually lower or stabilize at the very least the cost for food, because as you mentioned, food security is what we're looking at in the long term.
And not to mention the quality of the vegetable in itself.
I was about to say, you know, at the end of the day, what is determining the quality is the freshness of the produce, and how better to have fresh produce is if it's just not behind in your backyard or within the next building or on your rooftop. That's you can literally harvest just before you cook, and that's the freshest ingredient that you can have. And of course, I think sustainability in terms of being able to self-sustaining in that sense, because, you know, like you said, you know, what if the food supply chain got disrupted and you don't have that access? You will have this as an option for you to be provided. So I think there are quite a number of benefits that are quite obvious with regards to urban farming. But before we continue with a few more questions, we'd like to pull in MARDI to come in to talk about how they're supporting this. And Dr. ZULHAZMI SAYUTI, Director of Horticulture Research Center from MARDI, joins us in conversation. Hi, Dr. ZULHAZMI. Thanks for joining us.
Hi,
now, we'd like to just ask you, what is MARDI's role and efforts in promoting urban farming? ZULEIRA earlier mentioned to us in terms of, you know, an overview of urban farming. Perhaps you can explain to us how MARDI is participating in this effort.
Okay, thank you again, Eileen. Thanks also to Bernama TV for inviting MARDI to this program. As MARDI, as you know, MARDI is one of the agencies under the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry, where our rules is to carry out R&D activities to develop technology and innovation in the agriculture sector. So before I further describe the role of MARDI, I would like to touch a little bit on the interesting topic today, urban farming, rethinking agriculture sector.
Yep.
For me, it's bring the means of transformation of agriculture sector, and Malaysia is planning to modernize agriculture sector by adopting smart farming to boost the income of farmers and also further advance the sector. It was stated clearly in the National Agri-Food Policy, DAN 2.0. Meanwhile, urban farming is one of the key indicators to improve food security and also nutrition, especially for the urban community. So I would like to highlight here the scenario, that issue that we are facing now today is if we are not realized, we are facing increase in population.
Yep.
The population in urban area expected to increase 77%, Eileen, and
Yes.
Total population of Malaysia is 80% of around 26 million people in the town, targeted into 2030. So this data was presented in Malaysia Urban Forum in 2020 in Kuala Lumpur. And this situation is due to the process of migration of people to obtain employment, education, business opportunity in cities, as well as the process of urbanization.
Yep.
So in fact, when our country faced the pandemic COVID-19, especially during PKP, many residents, especially city dwellers, and started gardening or farming, so they can get a fresh supply of vegetable also.
Yeah.
So back to the MARDI rules in the urban farming context. MARDI play an important role in generating technologies and innovation which are practically effective and appropriate to the condition of urban environment, whereas aspect of space, landscape are taken into account. In addition, factors such as time constraint influenced by lifestyle as well as high cost of living are also given attention. All these aspects inspire the idea of innovation that is
Right.
produced by MARDI. So MARDI was started R&D in urban farming in 2012. Even in 2014, MARDI managed to organize urban horticulture conference in Johor Bahru to
Right.
promote the importance of way forward of urban agriculture in Malaysia. So more aggressive R&D activities were implemented in 11 Malaysian plan and continue in the 12 Malaysian plan until today. So basically, urban agriculture R&D at MARDI is divided into two categories of technology and innovation that we created. Urban farming related to the community based and also commercial based. So these two categories have different technology output. For example, technology, the innovation that we produce by MARDI for community urban farming, such as green kit, ferti kit, urban kit. So a lot of kit that we invent.
that make it available. But we don't have a lot of time here. But perhaps in another one more minute, Dr. ZULHAZMI, you can explain to us what assistance is now available for the public or organizations and businesses at large who are interested to sort of delve into urban farming, so that they are aware of what are the opportunities available.
Okay, besides conducting R&D, MARDI also does the transfer of technology and also innovation to the target group and publics. Few approach are being done, such as courses and training, exhibition and also demonstration. And field advisory also we do it and produce analysis services. And MARDI has also collaborated with the various parties to develop a community garden project. For the project that the technology and innovation that we have generated are applied to the gardening activity become easier and can produce quality crops. For example, here we also do collaboration with the public sector and also agencies. Then for information, currently we are conducting a urban farming project conducted by DOA, the Department of Agriculture, on the project of community project. Then we involve about 40 communities all over Peninsular Malaysia, whereby in that community garden, we apply all of the kits invented by MARDI and also the technology that we transfer to the community, Eileen.
Right. So these are some of the initiatives that have been developed by MARDI and is available to the public. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. We will, of course, speaking to Dr. ZULHAZMI, SAYUTI, Director of Horticulture Research Center for MARDI. ZULEIRA, thanks for joining us back in as I spoke to Dr. ZULHAZMI. What I wanted to ask you is, let's move on to, is the government doing enough to promote urban farming? Because this is one of the other things that do we have incentives, or should we be looking more towards how we're going to make this more accessible, promote it sexier? I'm not sure, but perhaps you can give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I think at a policy level, we are working with the government to provide recommendations on incentives, right? But I think it's also a situation where we need to be able to demonstrate whether we have necessary talent and whether we have necessary supply in order to push this forward. So as I've mentioned earlier, we are looking at quite a number of activities right now, right? So the scene is becoming very encouraging. And also under the agency that I currently manage, which is actually a merger between two key entities, which is the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center and the Technology Park, right? So we have the infrastructure, facilities, as well as policy support and platforms. So in the past, we've actually supported many of the urban farmers or entities that are working in urban farming solutions, right? So many of them are social enterprises as well, right? Because they work with the B40 community, they work with the farmer community. So they're social enterprises as well. So we offer a variety of programs, services, facilities. And I think more importantly is that we will play the role of the connector, right? So we will enable these partners or these players to partner and collaborate with the necessary parties to grow the urban farming facilities or solutions further, right? I think so that's a very important component. In fact, right now in the Technology Park Malaysia, under our MRANTI a mandate. So MRANTI stands for the Malaysian Research Accelerator for Tech and Innovation, right?
Right. So what is MRANTI's role specifically in urban farming though?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, we will provide program support, facilitation, as well as physical infrastructure. In fact, we are looking to introduce an agri-tech zone within the technology park itself. So we will be allocating a dedicated land space to actually incorporate urban farming, right? Urban farming complement with the offerings of AI, and all sorts of R&D into the agri-tech sector. So we will be inviting entities to incubate their companies and their entities from Technology Park in itself. And then we will find ways to scale them and provide necessary market access. But we want the Technology Park Malaysia to be the hub or the R&D hub for agri-tech.
So if anyone who's sort of like listening to this and is interested, saying that, you know, like for me, say, for example, I want to get into urban farming, how do I do that? Is it advisable? Where do I start? You know, everybody has this like, okay, let's try this, but how? You know, that's that first step. That's that sort of like, you know, difficult sort of hurdle.
Sure. So I think the most accessible way right now is that we have multiple programs. So if you look up for our programs, I think we're quite, we advertise some of our programs through our Magic website. We also have social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well, which talks about some of the challenges that we throw, which is more thematic. Sometimes we have challenges around agri-tech. So we would advertise, say, those of you who are interested to promote your agri-tech solution, please apply for so and so. So just look out for our social media handles and our website. But other dedicated programs are such as the National Technology and Innovation Sandbox, where we'll actually open all year round for technology companies to apply to the sandbox. So you will be assisted through funding where necessary, as well as facilitation, whether it means obtaining necessary licenses or certification or even regulatory support to actually gain market access in those particular industry, including agri-tech. So that's one way to get into our programs. But otherwise, we usually have a very thematic challenges that we actually throw. Right? So I would encourage everyone to sort of log on to our website and even follow us on our social media page.
Right. Okay. So those are for those out there who are interested in urban farming. Look out for those opportunities. But let's look at some of the role model cities and towns and good examples of urban farming that you could potentially share with us, so that you know this is aspirational too.
Yeah. Well, of course, our neighbor is a big role model, but again, I would say that they don't have much of a choice, given that they have the scarcity of land issue, and we know who we're talking about, lah. Correct. Obviously, we're talking about Singapore here, right? So, in 2019, I mean, if I look at some stats, their market value is close to about 22 million. Urban farming in itself, like I said, it's not much of a choice. It is something that they need to embark on, given that food security is a big deal, right? Yeah. Food security is a big deal, and the fact that they do not have vast land space. So urban farming is the next best thing, right? Next best thing to actually ensure that there is sustainable food supply. Mm-hmm. But I think having said that, there are a number of countries that are already looking at urban farming. I think even in Europe, this is becoming the next big thing, because this is also relating to climate change, right? Yeah. This is also relating to global sustainability efforts. So I think the other project that sort of is done globally is in Paris, right? In France. It's called the Paris Culture Project, which was launched in 2016, right? Again, it was aimed at increasing the city's greenery, right? So this is one way to make the city green, right? Plant vegetables that can be that's edible, but at the same time gives you the right amount of greenery, right?
Absolutely. I
So
think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, why plant things that you can't eat if you're looking at food
exactly.
security? Make all the beautiful things that you're planting edible as well.
Yeah. So they've opened up this place at the one of their exhibition center. I can't pronounce it, by the way, but it's about 14,000 square meter, right, of space where it's actually transformed into urban farming. So that's
Yeah.
just one example of how things are done globally. But I think we're not too far off. I will go back to speak about Boomcrow because they've got a very impressive facility. It's high tech. It's very sophisticated, but all they do in there is produce import quality vegetables, right? And these are vegetables and even herbs that taste so fresh and so good, so crispy, so crunchy, right? So if we can do it here, I think there's really nothing to stop us from scaling this up further. So I really invite all the innovators and technology companies out there to look at this space as a space full of potential.
Thank you so much, ZULEIRA, for sharing your thoughts on urban farming. I look forward to this really growing and providing this food security that's far. It's high time that we really focus on this. And I look forward to farm-to-table solutions that are going to be fresh, of quality, and tastes great. And everyone can do it. Anybody can do it. It's all possible. I think we have to get over that mindset that we can't do this, that we can create this solution for our individual needs as well as our individual communities. Thank you so much. We were speaking to ZULHAZMI BAKAR. She was representing, of course, today we're talking from MRANTI, the CEO of MRANTI. We were speaking about urban farming, and urban farming is not something new to Southeast Asia, though. Many cities have centuries-long traditions of having citizens grow their own food. Here in Malaysia, though, the tradition is not as deeply ingrained, but the trend is catching on. Nevertheless, Malaysia's government perceives this activity as a stimulus towards achieving the well-being of the urban community and the natural environment. Hopefully, when your colleagues ask you about what you're doing for the next weekend, forget that art exhibit or that movie screening. Tell them you're going to get some dirt under your fingernails and you'll be at the farm. So I'm Elaine Robla. Thanks for watching The Nation. Bye for now.